Yeah, I'm Alex, born static. Living in Boston right now, grew up in New Jersey. I'm making music, just put out my first album, and playing out about a couple months around the city and stuff. I grew up in New Jersey first, ever since I was like 5 years old. For about like 15 years I lived there. Kind of the suburbs, like kind of central Jersey. I think a lot of like kind of snapshots from like New Jersey life sort of made it onto the album and the lyrics and stuff. There's like a line about driving through and passing by sort of these giant corporate fields, and that's sort of like the area we lived in would have a lot of like sort of long stretches of road where just like big corporations just own like huge masses of green fields, and so you'd be on this sort of like unlit sort of countryish road, and then suddenly you'd pass by like a giant Johnson & Johnson sign and just like a huge green grass, and it just looked really deserted. So like a lot of little bits kind of made it onto there. The weather was sort of like this, so I think a lot of memories of like snow and just having like snow blown up to the back door and just like covering the entire doorway sort of made it onto the album too. So I think living in the suburbs sort of, I think there are a lot of little snapshots of like suburban life on the album, like kind of little lyrical snapshots and stuff. I had a weird sort of like backwards, like I was raised on music kind of in a weird reverse sort of way. Like I grew up playing classical music since I was like 5. Like I was playing classical piano and every day, you know, and my parents signed me up for viola and played in the orchestra and stuff. Then I picked up guitar around high school, which is when I started getting interested in you know, sort of like the other side of things. And it was really weird. It's sort of more like from my own room, sort of like very like kind of a claustrophobic thing, and I would just hear about stuff like going on, and so it's kind of weird. I think a lot of the sort of classical music has definitely like made it onto the album, and it sort of lurks underneath everything, like in the melodies and the kind of chord progressions and stuff, and it's sort of encased in, you know, like in the electric guitars and the laptop kind of glitch stuff. But yeah, I've had sort of a mess of influences. It's sort of just a big conglomeration of a lot of different stuff. A lot of like older stuff I hadn't even discovered until like these past couple of years, which was a really, really big deal. It just sort of like, but I mean, it's kind of cool because it's like I didn't discover it in chronological order, so it sort of flattens everything. So they're all sort of at like equal playing fields for me. But yeah, I mean, like I think everything just sort of contributed a little piece to the music, whether like I actually think about it or not while I'm making it. Yeah. I've really spent like very little time playing with other people, which is why I think a lot of the album came out the way it did. I'm used to like kind of doing everything myself. Like I play pretty much like almost all the instruments on there, like the viola, the guitars, do the drum sequencing. So actually the live set that we've been playing around with, the new live setup, is sort of, it's like a really kind of the first time I'm really like playing with some other people as far as like my own music goes, like my own songs, and having other people sort of interpret them. So it's kind of a really big deal, and I wanted to make it a point to really like give them like complete freedom to just kind of reinterpret the songs how they wanted. And it's I think the songs are being translated like kind of really well, and it's sort of a whole new deal for me. So I think it's going to have a pretty big influence on like what I try to do next.
The song is on the radio. Every note's in tune. Now my hands are cold, eyes are glazed. Eternal fire's gonna get me today. So I just come to make sure you're okay.
I was sending out demos. I just had my first 3 tracks that I recorded, and so I was excited to just send it out to every single label I liked. And I've been a big fan of the Notwist for for a little while now, and I just heard like that they had started. I think Alien Transistor. I think they put out maybe one of their own EPs on the label at that point. So I emailed them, asked for their mailing address if I could send it to them, and I just mailed them a demo. And I think it took about 5 months, and they it was really funny. They emailed me saying, really simple. As he was the label manager was just saying, we actually really like it and we'd love to meet you sometime. And when they were emailing me, I was actually buying tickets for a Notwist show, which was going to be at the Middle East, I think, a couple weeks later. So I was like, well, I'm going to be at the show in a couple weeks, so we should just meet then. And so it all worked out, and we met. I met Marcus from the Notwist after the show, and we just talked about stuff. And he actually had the CD on the bus and was listening to it on the way to the show and everything, which was really kind of mind-blowing and just really bizarre, because this was sort of like, it was just a demo in some ways. Those songs actually did make it onto the album, so those were sort of the first 3 cuts from the album, and he just said basically, yeah, we really love and would love to put out a record, like anything you want to do. He actually said that it was he got a huge box of CDs, and it was the very last one in there, and I think he didn't find anything else he was interested in, was almost not going to listen to that last one, and then so just popped it in, and he was really into it. So it's just pretty like baffling that he was that into it. So now we email each other and stuff, and he asks me like what I'm listening to and asks me to like recommend bands to him and stuff, which is really weird, because I'd put on their album like every morning for like a couple weeks and stuff. So it was really good. It was a really good story. So good ending. For me, like what drew me to them was, they were my top choice. Like out of the whole list of labels that I sent to, like I basically told myself if they want it, like I'm definitely gonna go with them. And for me it was more about that, the excitement of working with a band that like has had a huge influence on me and that I really like, and also the fact that it was just starting out. The album would be like in their first 10 catalog numbers, and so for me, any sort of like problems with like overseas or international like connections, it was pretty much worth it to just kind of be in on this from like the ground up. I'm sort of new to the whole record business, and so I'm sort of discovering a lot of things like as I go along. This is like the first time I've had to deal with any of the kind of business technical sides that go with like distribution. Yeah, for me it's all worth it. Like it's just really exciting to be with them from the beginning. And they're really amazing, because they really treated the CD like it was like their own kid, and they just like any sort of tweak I'd put to the album, like Marcus would pick up on it right away. And the cool thing about it was he never told me to like change anything, or never really made any of his own recommendations. It was completely hands off, like not even on like sequencing or track ordering or anything. He just told me just keep sending it to him as I work on it, and he never really said, oh, I think you should do this, or I think you should do that. But you could tell they just really cared about it. They flew me out to London to master it, and they said they wanted to just make sure it had like the best sound it could possibly have. So Well, I went through kind of a lot of setups in my head. I mean, I had made the whole album by myself, and I sort of scratched off the option of doing sort of a one-man show right away, because for me, I mean, I think what works on record isn't necessarily what's going to work live. And I mean, like, I designed the album I recorded the album. I was sort of listening to it and picking it apart while I was by myself and in my own room, like in the middle of the night. And so I feel like that's what the record is made for. And I feel like if you just try to thrust that onto the stage and force people in a club environment to like listen to that, it's not necessarily going to work. So I definitely knew I wanted to play with some other people too, because it's sort of my chance to do some collaborations. And I just really wanted to leave the door wide open, and we sort of stumbled on a lot of really, I think, exciting stuff. The sound is a lot more, definitely a lot more like aggressive and a lot more spontaneous. We stay true to the songs from the album. I mean, we sort of stumbled on a lot of weird sounds, like my friend who's sort of the second guitarist, actually never touches the guitar. It's pretty much leaning up against the wall, and it picks up on the tones from the bass and my guitar, and he pretty much creates all the tones from one kind of messed up distortion pedal, and so it creates this sort of wall of noise, which is really exciting because we actually never really know quite what sounds are going to come out of it that night. We actually haven't even figured out what exactly is creating the tones. It's actually might be sort of a straight electrical signal. And actually the drums were a big question for me of what I wanted to do with the drums, because I think what I was really excited about was sort of the weird drum samples that I found for the album. And I knew I wanted to preserve some of that, but I didn't want to go with the drum looping kind of technique, because it just really restricts you, and you feel like you're kind of chasing a computer around during the whole show. So what we ended up doing was using the samples from the album, but triggering all of them on sort of a sampler pad. So it's actually my friend who's a real drummer, an amazing drummer, but he's kind of doing it all on the pad and recreating the beats live from the samples from the album. So that way, I mean, in a way, it really is just a regular full rock band setup in a very typical way. It's just two guitars, drums, and bass, but just with a lot of sort of weird twists to it. The whole Boy and Static project is sort of like it's sort of an alter ego for myself, and I think part of it is recording alone and doing it in this very sort of like isolated log cabin kind of setup. So I feel like that's sort of essential to the songs and to the sound. I think if I was going to do something with a live band, it would probably come under some sort of other umbrella or something. But I mean, it's definitely already having sort of a big influence on the way I'm recording and writing songs. Trying the whole live setup, I think it's definitely like kind of leaking into my songwriting.